I'm not all that different from other people, really. I find myself, so much of the time, perhaps almost all of the time, wishing desperately that something grand and spectacular would happen. But it never seems to. It's never something, anything at all on the scale that I require it to be. There's just small things here and there, trifles really, in the grand scheme of things. I want horrible and dramatic things to happen, things that will irrevocably change me, alter me, reorient the entire makeup of that which I am, that which I take myself to be as a person, as a conscious entity, an experiencer. I want to be reshaped in such a way as that I'm unable to reclaim that which was prior to the shaping. But it never really does. It's always happening to someone, peoples, and places elsewhere, far away. Such just seems like an abstraction, really. Like it's nothing. Like it didn't even happen at all to anyone, anywhere. People would say to me that I should be grateful, right? That what I lament is something absurd, something, in a sense, sick, that this is a sickness to desire for horrible things to occur to oneself within one's immediate environment. But I don't see it that way. I see it as something quite banal. It all comes back to boredom, really, doesn't it? Wanting something to happen, anything, even if it is something horrible. The horrible things, perhaps most of all, because they leave the greatest mark. They make the greatest impact. They are, in a sense, the most exciting. It's the longing for punctuation of this monotony. People who are in these environments at all times, right? These states that someone such as myself might claim to long for, these dramatic, horrible events, people that are locked within them at present long for what I and others like myself appear to have. But ultimately their fate would be the same as mine, because there's no escape from the sufferings. The absence of suffering is itself suffering. There's only suffering here, right? That's a base coat, at least. There can be little sprinkles, on top, a little bit of euphoria here and there, a little bit of joy, a little dopamine rush. But the base code is different shades of suffering, I would say. Boredom is suffering, right? Craving is suffering. Desire is suffering. And even these events, right, whether they be good or bad, right, these big dramas, none of it's ever going to be enough. Sure, it's just punctuation after all, right? Though it leaves a mark and has a lasting impact, it's just an echo. And yeah, ultimately one is left with only the echo, which is not the event itself. Everything passes. I wanted to acknowledge something about how people are, a lot of people, or at least it was, certainly a few years ago. That's where I at least checked out of perceiving things in this way, but many people still think that such is what is occurring, but which is that perhaps these are the end times, or there's a planned takedown of society, or the end of the Kali Yuga, or it's the grand solar minimum, or something like this, right? A lot of these theories are abounding and have been abounding for some time now. I mean, there's always some variation on these doomsday prophecies going about, right? Always, probably for as long as humans have been in existence. But more so in the past few years, this has been particularly pronounced as people's lives were turned upside down and they were seeking for some way to make sense, some explanation that would make sense of what was occurring. It all comes back to ontological insecurity, as I've touched on before. You may or may not know that when one is unsure about where they are and what is occurring, it's very uncomfortable, as you may imagine, and so they seek desperately for a way to make sense of that situation, even if the explanation that they latch upon is kind of a entirely dismal one that doesn't bode well for them and their future prospects. But at any rate, what it does give them is the something to work with, right? Some means of comprehending what is occurring. They know where they stand, right? They're not just cast adrift in this vast sea of incomprehension, like a dementia patient or something. And so I see that so much now, and I was one of these people for a time. But I have, I guess, come to think better of it, right? That is, to be more specific, that I was one of these people for a time where I thought such things were perhaps occurring, but, and many still think this way now. But I'm not really of that persuasion anymore. I mean, I can see the arguments for it, and I can make a case for it. I can sample the evidence and so on, and can convince myself of that certain things are in fact occurring. But then on the same token, I can make a case for the complete contrary, right? And time again, so much of what people in these circles proclaim to be happening, and that what will imminently be occurring does not, in fact, occur. And so, and this, of course, there are precedents for it from people like these doomsday cults and so on, right? And you have the prophetic, charismatic leader, and they say that on such and such a time, at such and such a date, that it's all going to end, right? And then it, of course, doesn't come to pass, and then they go, "Oh no, you got me wrong." Like I received a channeling of some new updated information, and yeah. That keeps people hanging on, right? It keeps people invested in the narrative, and they don't drift away. And for the most part, they're probably more than obliging to go along with this, because they are, I guess, as dependent upon what the cult leader is professing as the cult leader is dependent upon them for, I guess, their narcissistic supply, right? And all of the groupie pussy or whatever that they get, And it's just the same stuff that I guess I see playing out in a lot of these, I guess, broad brush term conspiracy circles. No doubt there is a great deal of merit to what they're saying, but yeah, I'm not, how you say, I'm not really along for the ride anymore. Haven't been for some time. If this shit that they're saying occurs, then it occurs. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Either way, I'm good. I have no dog in this fight. So much of what they prompt people to do, right, is to prep, gather supplies and so on, and get yourself a piece of farmland and get all your chickens and all your grains and set up your greenhouses and like fair enough, right? If you want to continue living, but I don't have a dog in this fight, so I don't really. So why would I even care about any of this, right? It's and why even like my I mean I've spoken about this before also, like why would I want to I mean the state that society will be in after a potential collapse, right? Depending what the way in which it does collapse, right? Whether it's an environmental catastrophe or just simply an economic one. Either way, it's going to be, the environment is going to be incredibly inhospitable, and one is going to be really fighting for their survival. And most likely having to engage in all manner of combat and so on with other human beings who are trying to compete with them for resources, or trying to steal, from them the resources that they have themselves gathered. yeah, there's just no way to live, really. I don't really see the point in living now, let alone in such a circumstance as that, where everything is even more like abominable. Ugh, it's starting to rain. Fuck. Yeah, hold on. Be back in a second. I'm just gonna go inside. Of course, I understand that the reason why people want to, prep and so on, right? It's just the same as I always say, and will no doubt probably keep on saying, because as far as I can tell, it appears to be the case that people aren't rational in the least, that they're just behaving, myself included, right? Although I would say that perhaps I am some degrees at a remove from these base just survival impulses. They're nothing more than a manifestation of the will to life. Or maybe I'm just like an aberration, right? And I can just I'm just like a mutation of the will, right? A retardation of the will, perhaps. An error in the code, say. But for the most part, right, people are just blindly compelled to survive at all costs, even though if one were to rationally assess, to scrutinize the circumstances that one is endeavoring to survive in, they would, I guess, if they were being reasonable, rational, logical, so on and so forth, would have to conclude that, yeah, it makes no sense for me to continue living here. But if they were able to do that then, in these dire survival circumstances, then they'll be able to do the same now as well, because just as then in a deplorable, abominable survival situation, the proverbial zombie apocalypse, there's just as much reason as continuing then as there is now in comparative ease of living, an easy living situation, which is to say there's no point at all, never was, and I guess most probably never will be. I am wholly on board with Lagotti's assertion that this is all malignantly useless, and that this whole edifice of being would be better to have not been. Yeah, that's really neither here nor there. No use crying over spilt milk, as they say, and yeah. I don't know, there's really no hope for any of this here. There's no way that any of this can be redeemed, whether it be on a societal level or an existential level, an ontological level even. That's more of a bold claim, perhaps, I don't know. But on the societal level, at least, there's no hope whatsoever on this human-centric level. What we have is just a bunch of morons being led about like sheep by psychopathic, quote-unquote, shepherds. just crass opportunists, leveraging the relative idiocy of the masses for their own benefit. And they're not much more intelligent themselves, but the saying, the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and that's all that this is, right? The two-eyed man, of course, just fucks off and has nothing to do with it at all. They wash their hands with it. There's that quote that I always like. I think it was from like a manager, perhaps, in the NFL. Some sport, anyhow, a manager of a team. He was being interviewed. They're a successful team, from what I can gather. And interviewer was asking him something, I guess, to the effect of like, what's your secret? How are you so successful? And his response was, the trick is to be smart enough so that you can outwit your opponent, but not so smart that you see how little all of this matters. And that really kind of cuts to the core of what is required to be enthusiastic about this enterprise of living, and successful, of course, within it. And that's kind of how I see these psychopathic leaders and so on. They're smart enough to beat everyone else at the game, but not smart enough to just see how stupid the whole fucking thing is. But there's really no hope here. So I guess if you can see the problems, right, don't waste your time trying to find solutions. I don't know, just the way that I see it. Just enjoy what peace and solitude you can. Do as a comrade in tragedy of mine does, and just play World of Warcraft and jerk off. If that's your thing, then just just do it, right? There's nothing to see here, nothing to be done, nowhere to go, no one to know. And don't fret and worry about bullshit that can't be remediated in an absolute sense. Yeah, something like that. This has been very unfocused and meandering, so kudos if you made it through all of this. Okay, and goodbye.